The UAE says it was attacked by 4 ballistic missiles and 6 drones from Iran. This comes the day after Tehran urged 3 major ports in the UAE to evacuate in what is considered the regime's first threat to attack infrastructure of a neighboring country. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia also announced it intercepted multiple Iranian drones, warning residents today of more potential incoming projectiles. Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson is live in Dubai with more details. Lucas?
Breaking news, Iran has retaliated hours after U.S. forces executed a large-scale bombardment of Kharg Island, the oil export hub that accounts for 90% of Iran's crude oil revenue. The Iranian regime launched a drone strike directly at an oil terminal in the United Arab Emirates, a facility used to ship oil overland via pipeline to Oman, specifically designed to bypass the Strait of Hormuz entirely. Iran's message is unmistakable. If the United States hits what keeps Iran's economy alive, Iran will hit what keeps the region's economy alive. But that is not all that happened today. The UAE confirmed it was struck by 4 ballistic missiles and 6 drones launched from Iran, the latest in a barrage that has now seen Iran launch over 1,600 drones and nearly 300 ballistic missiles at the UAE alone over the past 2 weeks. 3 times the volume of missiles fired at Israel. Saudi Arabia intercepted multiple Iranian drones and issued warnings to residents about additional incoming projectiles. And in western Iraq, a KC-135 refueling aircraft, a tanker aircraft supporting Operation Epic Fury, crashed during a combat mission. 6 American service members were killed. They were not killed by enemy fire. They were killed doing one of the most dangerous jobs in military aviation, aerial refueling in a complex combat environment at night. Their deaths bring the total number of U.S. service members lost in Operation Epic Fury to at least 13. Tonight, we honor them and we break down exactly what is happening in this war. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. Let's get into it. Iran's drone strike on the UAE oil terminal was not random. It was calculated, targeted, and strategically deliberate, a direct response to the American bombardment of Kharg Island. After U.S. warships and aircraft pounded Kharg Island for several hours overnight, Iran chose its counterstrike with care. The UAE oil terminal it targeted is not a military installation. It is an energy infrastructure facility, part of the pipeline system that moves Gulf oil overland to Oman, specifically built to avoid the Strait of Hormuz choke point. Iran hit it precisely because it represents the alternative route that Gulf states have developed to circumvent Iranian pressure on the strait. The message Tehran is sending is direct and dangerous. There is no safe route. Iran can reach the energy infrastructure of every Gulf nation it chooses to target. The strait is not the only pressure point. The pipelines are vulnerable too. The UAE's total tally over 2 weeks of this conflict is staggering in ways that have been largely underreported. 1,600 drones and nearly 300 ballistic missiles launched at the country in 14 days. That is 3 times the missile volume directed at Israel over the same period. The UAE has been absorbing an extraordinary level of Iranian aggression and doing so while attempting to maintain the image of a stable, functioning business hub and global financial center. A drone hit a building 2 miles from where Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson was standing, in the heart of the UAE's luxury hotel and skyscraper district. This is not a remote military zone. This is one of the most commercially dense, internationally trafficked cities on earth. The proximity of those strikes to civilian and commercial infrastructure is not accidental. It is Iran demonstrating that its reach extends into the economic heart of the Gulf. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, intercepted multiple Iranian drones and issued public warnings to residents about additional incoming projectiles. The entire Gulf region is now living under active Iranian attack, not as a theoretical threat, but as a daily operational reality. Iran's foreign minister made a public statement that crystallizes the regime's current military strategy with brutal clarity. The targets, he said, are American assets, American installations, American military bases, everything that belongs to Americans. That is the declared objective. He also attempted to provide a justification for the UAE strikes, claiming that Iran attacked the Emirates because the UAE had allowed its territory to be used to attack Iranian interests, specifically referencing what he described as satellite-guided rockets launched from UAE territory toward Kharg Island. That claim has not been independently verified. but it represents Iran's attempt to frame its attacks on Gulf civilian and commercial infrastructure as acts of legitimate military response rather than what they actually are. A campaign of regional terror designed to impose economic costs on every nation that has not actively opposed the American-led military operation. The foreign minister also made a claim that deserves careful examination. He stated that Iran has only closed the Strait of Hormuz to American and Israeli interests, not to the broader global shipping community. That framing is not just misleading, it is economically illiterate as applied to the real world. The Strait of Hormuz is not a bilateral waterway between Iran and the United States. Only 2% of tankers passing through the strait ever reach American shores. The nations most immediately and devastatingly affected by any closure of the strait are not American at all. China receives 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan depends on it overwhelmingly. South Korea, India, the European Union, every major economy in Asia and Europe depends on the free flow of oil through that 21-mile corridor. When Iran threatens the strait, it is not threatening America. It is threatening the entire global economy. It is holding the world's energy supply hostage and dressing that hostage, taking up, in the language of targeted resistance, the international coalition of warships now assembling at President Trump's direction. Nations sending vessels to keep the strait open represents the world's response to that hostage taking, not just an American response, a global one. Every analysis of this conflict, every strategic assessment, every geopolitical calculation, every discussion of military objectives and operational timelines must be grounded in the most fundamental fact of war. People are dying. American people, heroes. The Pentagon has now confirmed that at least 13 U.S. service members have been killed in Operation Epic Fury. 7 of them died in direct combat-related incidents. 6 of them, the most recent, were killed when a KC-135 Stratotanker refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq during a combat mission in support of the operation. Military officials have stated that the crash was not the result of hostile or enemy fire. It was not the result of friendly fire. The investigation is ongoing, but the cause, whatever the investigation ultimately determines, does not diminish the sacrifice. These 6 Americans died doing their jobs in a combat zone in the service of their country in support of a mission that is being executed on behalf of the American people and the broader cause of global security. They came from 2 Air National Guard units, the 101st, the 99th, and the 117th. Their names have been released by the Pentagon, and they deserve to be remembered not as statistics, but as the full human beings they were. These were not just pilots and airmen. They were husbands and wives. They were fathers and mothers. Some of them had children under the age of 4 at home. They had said goodbye, and for some of them, what felt like a routine departure became the last one. That is the human reality beneath the strategic analysis. That is what it costs, and every American should understand it. The deaths of the 6 airmen aboard the KC-135 have brought a dimension of military aviation into public focus that is rarely discussed, and that deserves to be understood in full. Aerial refueling is one of the most technically demanding, operationally critical, and inherently dangerous missions in modern military aviation. And it is a mission that has been running continuously around the clock throughout Operation Epic Fury. Because without it, the massive aerial campaign against Iran cannot happen. Retired Lieutenant Colonel and former Air Force pilot Michael Lacey explained what a refueling mission actually involves in operational terms. A standard tanker crew, 3 to 6 personnel depending on mission type, takes off at maximum weight, loaded with tens of thousands of pounds of jet fuel. They fly to a designated refueling track in contested airspace, often at night, often in weather, often stacked above multiple layers of other aircraft in a complex and congested airspace management environment. Then they connect physically in the air with the aircraft they are refueling. 2 multi-ton aircraft flying in close formation linked by a fuel boom or a drogue system, transferring thousands of pounds of fuel while both aircraft maintain precise speed, altitude, and spacing. A deviation of a few feet, an unexpected turbulence, a momentary loss of situational awareness, a radio miscommunication can be catastrophic. And it is not just one refueling per mission. A tanker crew may fuel multiple aircraft in sequence. When one receiver departs, the next arrives. The crew manages changing fuel loads, changing aircraft configurations, changing radio frequencies, and changing instructions continuously throughout the mission, while the strike aircraft they are supporting execute the actual combat operations. Lieutenant Colonel Lacey was direct about what the public misses when it focuses only on the fighters and bombers. The tanker crews are the backbone of sustained air operations. Without them, the F-35s and B-52s and B-2s cannot stay in the fight. The entire aerial campaign against Iran, every strike, every interception, every intelligence gathering mission depends on the men and women of the tanker community doing their jobs perfectly every time in conditions that would challenge the most experienced aviators in the world. The 6 airmen who died this week were doing exactly that in a combat zone at night in support of a mission that is protecting American interests and, in a larger sense, global stability. Their sacrifice is not less significant because they were not holding rifles. It is not less meaningful because they were not in a bomb crater. They were in the cockpit of a machine that makes everything else possible. Even as American forces fight in the Middle East, a disturbing reminder emerged this week that the threat does not only exist overseas. A jihadist attack occurred at Old Dominion University in Virginia, specifically targeting ROTC members and cadets. Authorities reported that the attacker targeted individuals connected to the university's Reserve Officers Training Corps program, the pipeline through which many of America's future military officers are developed. The attacker was armed. The ROTC cadets were not. And yet they responded, confronting the threat, neutralizing it effectively, and demonstrating in a campus setting the same character and composure that military training is designed to produce. Lieutenant Colonel Lacey, who spent part of his career as an ROTC instructor, reflected on the attack with a perspective that is both personally painful and strategically illuminating. ROTC environments are typically considered safe, places where young Americans are shaped into leaders, where the lessons of service and sacrifice are passed on from one generation to the next. The fact that a jihadist chose to target that environment specifically is not random. It is a statement about what the enemy fears. They fear the next generation of American military officers. They fear the pipeline that produces them. And the response of those cadets, unarmed, outnumbered, but trained and composed, is itself a message back. And Lacey noted that the instructors who return to ROTC programs typically do so because they want to give back, to take everything they learned in service and invest it in the young men and women who will carry that mission forward. The attack at Old Dominion was an assault not just on individuals, but on that entire idea, on the continuity of American military excellence, on the institution that bridges the generation that fought to the generation that will fight next. The cadets who responded with courage in that moment validated everything that institution stands for, and their instructor, by all accounts, had prepared them well. Despite the retaliation strikes against the UAE, despite the 13 American lives lost, despite the Iranian drones filling Gulf skies, the overall trajectory of this conflict continues to point in one direction. President Trump's energy secretary appeared on camera and stated that this war will be wrapping up soon. The conflict will come to an end within the next few weeks, the secretary said. And when it does, the rebound in oil supplies will push prices back down. The economic disruption is real but temporary. Iran's foreign minister is simultaneously claiming that the conflict proves Iran's endurance, but the numbers tell a different story. Iran's ballistic missile launch rates have fallen 90% from day one of the campaign. Its drone attack rates are down 95% from peak levels. Its navy is gone. Its air force is largely destroyed. Its defense industrial base is being systematically eliminated. The regime is firing everything it has left at the UAE, at Saudi Arabia, at Israel, at American bases across the region, because it is running out of the capacity to fire anything at all. The Kharg Island strike was a major escalation, a direct hit on the economic heart of the Iranian regime. But President Trump chose not to destroy the oil infrastructure itself. That restraint is a signal. The door to a negotiated end remains open. Iran can choose to stop. Iran can choose to come to the table. The terms will not be favorable. But the alternative, as the Kharg Island bombing demonstrates, is the continued destruction of everything the regime depends on to survive. Trump's energy secretary's confidence that the war ends in weeks reflects an assessment of the military reality. Iran is running out of options, running out of weapons, running out of money, and running out of the organizational coherence required to continue fighting as a unified force. The price of that outcome, 13 Americans dead, the UAE under fire, Gulf oil infrastructure threatened, global energy markets disrupted, is real and heavy. But the alternative, an Iran with nuclear weapons, long-range missiles, and control of the Strait of Hormuz, would have cost incomparably more.